22nd of December, and today is my mother's anniversary. I was 19 when my mother died, and it seems like a long time ago now. It's almost a distant memory, which is kind of a bit strange to think of. But during college, university was probably the best and worst time for me. I barely started studying in college. I was doing engineering when my mother got sick, then she died, and then towards the end of college my father got sick and subsequently died both of cancer. So when my mother got sick with cancer, it was something very new. I knew almost nothing about it, very little. I had no experience of it previously, and it was a shock, needless to say, and it was a leap into the unknown. And I suppose I was quite young then. I was 19, and I suppose one of the hardest parts of dealing with it is that I felt the vast majority of time that I had with my mother I was a child, and now that I'm an adult, I suppose the thing I miss most is to have had a couple of years with my mother as an adult, and to actually experience some time with my parents one-to-one as adults and interacting as adults, which is something that I never got the chance to do, which is the one, I mean, it's pointless saying a regret, but it's the one thing that I certainly miss. So I still remember that time when my mother died, December 22nd, this day, and it was the lead up to Christmas, and it was in Cork. The streets were drowned with water. It was lashing rain, and it was a very wet time. There was very heavy rain at the time, and she had moved to the hospice in Marymount, which was on the north side of Cork City. And the night she died, I was alone with her in the room when she actually died, and this was the first time I'd ever seen anybody die so close. I was just sitting there in the room. We were sitting in silence. She was unable to speak at the time, and it was a very peaceful experience. I was just sitting there with her in the room, and she stopped breathing, and that was it. And yeah, I felt it was quite a spiritual feeling, because I felt she had moved from this world to another one in a very peaceful way. And partly, one of the credit I would give to that is the Bishop of Cork at the time, and people say give a lot of criticism to the Catholic Church at the moment, and that's probably the only reaction they get at the moment, and a lot of it is justified. But this is a story which I would credit some of the characters there. At the time, he was in West Cork, and he bumped into my aunt in West Cork and said, "Oh, how are you?" And she said, "Not great, because my sister is very ill." And he said, "Where is she?" And she told him where he was, and he dropped everything and went from West Cork back into the city and went in to see my mother that day. And she died with a smile on her face pretty much a day later, which is something that I'm very grateful for. And he is that type of character. He's a lovely man, real man of the people, and he dedicates his life really to helping people, and all of that work is very much unseen, and he does all of that behind the scenes, and massive support, so many people, and he's the essence of community, and people like that are everywhere, and the world would be a worse place without them. So she moved on from this world in a very peaceful way, and that was the type of character she was. She was quite unsentimental. She didn't collect, she didn't gather much stuff. I remember that night going through her things, because we had to, and going through her things to see her belongings, and really she had nothing. I mean, she had a handbag with keys and a few personal items, and almost nothing else. I mean, she didn't hoard anything, and really it was a message that she really valued human interaction and was such a sociable person. And that was underlined by going through her personal effects after she died, because she owned almost nothing. It was her emphasis was completely on people, and I've adopted quite some of that and a lot of that, I think, throughout my own life. And it's the key to happiness, I think, is to spend your life focusing on people and warmth and love that you can give and get from other people, and that sense of social and community and stuff. But she was born in a very small town in West Cork called Ballyhob, which is very remote now, and when she was born must have been as remote as you can possibly get. So she was born in 1935, and Ballyhob then in those days was an extremely remote place. There was one bus, I think, a day, and it must have taken hours to get just to the local city, Cork City, and much more torturous to get to Dublin. And growing up in that small town, it was a single street, really. It still is mostly, and a single street characteristically for an Irish town with loads of pubs, about 5 or 6 different pubs on one street. And the only thing they had really was each other. That sense of community. It really had a really strong sense of community. That sense of community isn't quite as strong now down there, but back in those days, it was an incredibly close-knit community where everybody helped each other out, where everybody knew each other and supported each other, and used to meet every day and regularly connect with each other. And it was a lovely warmth. And I grew up as a child listening. I was reared on those stories of country life, of small country living, honest, plain, simple life, of stories of how her dog, it wasn't her dog, but a dog saved her. She fell into the river, and a dog pulled her out, barked and pulled her out of the place and saved her. And they used to run a shop in the village, in the little town, and it sold absolutely everything. And they would have fish hanging over the door, and everything arrived in this Thompson's box. And in the town there was what they called a casino, which was basically just a room where people met and played cards and drank, and they dramatically called it a casino. And I was reared on all those stories of just these ordinary, wonderful characters who just seemed larger than life, and it was never really about things that they had, it was about the relationships they had with each other. And that's something that I've based my own life on, and it's something that's helped me live a more wholesome, fulfilling life since. Then she was a school teacher, so she was a vice principal in a primary school, and in those days it wasn't usual for women to work. Quite a lot of them gave up their jobs or had to, and I suppose amongst my friends I was one of the few people whose mothers worked, and that was a cultural difference back then. Not necessarily an easy one, but there were a lot of benefits associated with it as well, I suppose, in terms of, I mean, she was a little bit of ahead of her time in being out there working and providing an example to the rest of us. Very academically, and it's a characteristic of children and parents, you tend to be guided down quite an academic path in life when your mother is a teacher. But she taught children all the way through her life, so her class were always either junior infants or senior infants, and she kept that childish innocence going throughout her life and never lost it, and had a childish innocence to her in many respects through her life, and a sense of joy and kind of happiness. There was a bit of a Crocodile Dundee element to her as well, because coming from West Cork, a small country living, we would walk down Cork City and she'd be saying hello to everybody, and she'd stop and say hello and talk to anybody, random strangers. And that's something I kind of do myself now as well. I find it funny to see myself, but I like it. I like talking to people, and I'm fascinated with characters years that it made me, and maybe that's why I do this. But it's strange thinking back on that experience now, and thinking back of some of it is horrific. It's just a slow decline of the human life over a period of about a year. So once she was diagnosed, I went to Undangan in Kerry with her on holidays, and it wasn't really spelled out at the time, but it was really our last holiday together, and that was quite a special experience, and it's part of the experience of that town now, Undangan, and one of the nicest towns in the world really, and some of the best pubs you can possibly get. So on this day, her anniversary, Mary Phil, I'd like to say happy anniversary, and I hope you're enjoying your time up there in a better place, and God bless.